Madam President, we're ready to go whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon. I want to welcome you to the Cook County Equity Town Hall Veterans Day 2020. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce our panelists and moderator for the event. Rebecca Van Horn, who's a physician from the Road Home program. Eli Williamson, Leave No Veteran Behind. Emanuel Johnson from the McCormick Foundation. Karen Hernandez, Chicago Vets. Bill Browne, the Cook County Department of Veterans Affairs, and Denise Barreto, the Cook County Director of Equity and Inclusion, who will serve as our moderator. I'd also like to thank the Kennedy Forum of Illinois for sponsoring this event with us. First, I'd like to wish you a happy Veterans Day, which will be celebrated this Wednesday, November 11th. I know I speak for all of Cook County when I say that we are a stronger nation because of the service and sacrifices of our veterans. My father and his only brother served in World War II, and I heard many stories about their service. The Cook County Department of Veterans Affairs makes it a year-round priority to provide resources and outreach to our veteran community in order to provide a better quality of life for them and their families. I'd like to acknowledge again Bill Browne, the Director of Cook County's Department of Veterans Affairs, who makes so much of this work possible. Some of our goals and programs include conducting outreach to Cook County employees who are veterans to provide veterans assistance through resources of federal, state, county, and other local agencies. Sharing a resource clearinghouse to assist veterans, dependents, and survivors with veteran assistance health benefits, educational benefits, retirement benefits, housing assistance, and home loans. Connecting with service providers to help veterans find jobs. Identifying veteran concerns to provide proper resources. I look forward to our conversation this afternoon and hearing directly from residents about what our veterans need to know and how we can help. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. And my name is Denise Barreto, and I'm the Director of Equity and Inclusion for Cook County Government. And I welcome you to our virtual Town Hall Veterans Edition. Before I introduce all of our panelists, I want to start by introducing and welcoming the co-presenters of this forum, which is the Kennedy Forum, Illinois. Their Executive Director, Cheryl Potts, is joining us for a few words. Cheryl?
Thank you. I want to thank the President Preckwinkle's vision. I want to thank you and thank President Preckwinkle for her vision for creating today's discussion and inviting the Kennedy Forum, Illinois to help coordinate the effort. I also want to thank our nation's veterans and those who continue to serve our country for your sacrifice and leadership. I am Cheryl Potts, the Executive Director of the Kennedy Forum, Illinois. The Kennedy Forum was started by former Congressman Patrick Kennedy in an effort to eliminate stigma and discrimination against people living with mental health and substance use disorders. The Kennedy Forum was founded in 2014 with the express vision of creating a future where all persons are treated with dignity and receive the mental and physical care and support they need to thrive and achieve their goals. We believe in a health system that fully recognizes that the brain is part of the body. We provide a variety of policy, advocacy, and community education efforts that focus on the structural and economic barriers to mental health care access. We call for more significant investment in the chronic care of mental health instead of delaying care until it is an acute illness. This is incredibly true for our veterans. To learn more about what we do or how to become more involved in our work, I encourage you to visit our website at www.thekennedyforumillinois.org. I'm happy to turn it over to Denise and to this distinguished panel of experts so that we discuss the health and well-being of our nation's veterans.
Thank you. Thank you, Cheryl. I am delighted to welcome our panelists. I'm going to say everyone's name, but each person will have an opportunity to introduce themselves and their organizations. First, we have Dr. Rebecca Van Horn from Road Home Program, Eli Williamson from Leave No Veteran Behind, Emanuel Johnson from the Robert R. McCormick Foundation, Karen Hernandez from Chicago Vets, and our very own Cook County Government's Bill Browne in our Veterans Affairs Office. Dr. Van Horn, will you introduce yourself first?
Absolutely. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you to President Preckwinkle and everyone who put this together today. It's really wonderful to be able to hear and support our veterans in Cook County. So I'm a psychiatrist by training. I work at Rush Medical Center, where the Road Home program has its home. And we are a mental health care clinic that provides both outpatient care and intensive outpatient treatment for veterans, military families, and active duty service members, both here in Cook County and in Illinois, and around the country for those who come to us for a 2-week program to treat PTSD.
Excellent. Thank you. Eli?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Good afternoon. My name is Eli Williamson. I'm the co-founder of Leave No Veteran Behind. The primary focus of Leave No Veteran Behind is to invest in veterans to build better and more resilient communities. I would be remiss if I didn't thank President Preckwinkle for her continued engagement with veterans. She has, and her team with Bill Browne, has been engaging with veterans since she's taken office, and we're very appreciative of that. One of the opportunities that our organization has invested in locally is we run a very large transitional jobs program here in the city of Chicago, where Leave No Veteran Behind actually provides transitional work for veterans and their families. And the unique function of those transitional jobs is that they actually address a community need. We're one of the founding organizations of the Safe Passage program. We've been doing that since its inception, and before its inception as volunteers. Currently, we're also leveraging veterans as contact tracers to address the needs of COVID-19. But more specifically, we are in the process of forming a long-term partnership with the county, where our veterans and then youth participants are actually going out into communities to make sure that communities are prepared for existential threats like COVID-19, for social unrest, and any type of natural disaster. I will always say that veterans are not a charity. They're strategic investments. Many of our veterans have had training and experiences that our communities can use and leverage for success. And it's just a great opportunity to put our veterans in a place where they're actually able to make the type of changes and improvements in our communities that we need. Thank you.
Thank you, Eli. Next is Emanuel Johnson from the McCormick Foundation.
How's everybody doing today? I'm Emanuel Johnson, as Denise said, with the McCormick Foundation. Previously, I served co-leading their veterans work, giving away around $3 million to philanthropic efforts throughout the state of Illinois, but mostly focused on Cook County and the Chicagoland area. Luckily, I've been able to stay with the foundation now and focus more on their Inglewood investments, so I lead their place-based work there. We're very much trying to resolve a lot of the issues that's happening in the community, but also making sure that we're bringing veterans to the table inside of the Inglewood work to make sure they're represented across the work of economic development, housing, public safety, and other initiatives like that. Additionally, I'm a busy man, so veteran advocacy has always been a part of my life and will continue to be in my personal time now. I chair the Veterans Advisory Council for the city of Chicago, so making sure that the mayor's office have critical feedback of things that's going on, and also try to yell at the VA about a few things every chance that I get. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Karen Hernandez.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Karen Hernandez. I'm the Executive Director of Chicago Veterans. I'm also a United States Army veteran, currently still serving with the Illinois Guard. I'm the commander of the 79th Medical Company. And Chicago Veterans focuses on helping veterans transition in the Chicagoland areas where most of our work is. However, we do some work in the suburbs that surround us. I'm sure we'll talk more about the programs. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you for joining us. And our last person, bring us home, our Department of Veteran Affairs, Bill Browne. You're muted, Bill.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bill Browne. I'm the director for the Cook County Department of Veterans Affairs. I'm a proud veteran of the United States Air Force. I've been the director of the Veterans Affairs for the past 9 years. I would like to first begin thanking President Periwinkle for putting together this town hall meeting today. President Periwinkle has been very proactive in working with our veteran population since I've been on board, and this has been a plus for Cook County. As the Director for Veterans Affairs, I'm responsible for formulating policies, programs, and legislation on behalf of Cook County Board President Tony Periwinkle regarding veterans assistance and related matters. I'm also responsible for maintaining working relationships with the city, state, federal, and nonprofit veteran organizations and being a resource to ensure that qualified veterans throughout Cook County and their families can obtain the needed assistance. We'll go into later on in terms of what else we can do for Cook County. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you. And I am so grateful that everyone could join us today. Now, we have so many things that are going on, but I'm going to start with COVID-19. We are entering our 8th month in this crisis. And I just want to start with hearing from you about what are some of the unique challenges that our veterans face with COVID-19. And any panelist is free to take that.
I tell you what, why don't I respond? You know, I think our veterans community is particularly vulnerable in the midst of this pandemic as people try to reintegrate back into the communities as they finish their tour of duty. And we all know that the pandemic has had just tremendous economic impacts on our communities and on our families. And I'd like to hear perhaps from Rebecca about the ways in which the Road Home program is attempting to assist veterans as they struggle with the challenges not only of coming back into community, but also dealing with trying to reintegrate in the midst of an economic crisis.
Absolutely. Thank you for that question. So I think everything that you said, President Preckwinkle, is absolutely true. I think right now is a particularly challenging time for many veterans, you know, for many of the reasons that you mentioned in terms of accessing resources, in terms of dealing with some of the economic fallout of COVID. I'll try to focus a little bit on mental health care. That's what we do here at Road Home. You know, one of the first things that we did, and sort of a founding tenet of Road Home from the very beginning of the organization, has been trying to remove barriers to care. And certainly COVID puts up barriers left and right, and they sort of shift and change on a daily basis. So one of the things that we've been able to do is leverage technology. And, you know, early on in this crisis back in March, and we were kind of set up for this because Rush had used Road Home actually as the test site for telehealth over the last couple of years. So it really was very lucky, this sort of alignment of our staff, you know, having the training and then really being able to focus on making sure that our patients knew how to access care on their side in terms of getting up to speed on tech, making sure that, you know, they knew that we would be here throughout whatever was to come over the next several months. That was a little more challenging for our intensive outpatient program, which we had to really relies on intensive treatment. It's 7:30 in the morning to 4:30 at night. But we very quickly were able to provide a virtual version of that for Illinois residents and veterans. So, I mean, I think, you know, we continue to try to figure out how we can meet veteran and military families' mental health needs, you know, and make sure that we're connecting them to other resources in the community. Many of the partners here today also supporting.
And if I can add to that, one of the beauties of the veteran community is there's a lot of leaders. So once COVID struck, a lot of folks got together, a lot of the folks on this panel to figure out what we can do. And one of the things that rose to the top is the Jesse Browne VA, which mostly serves Black and Brown veterans, was closed for non-essential services. And two of the major services that I consider that they do is food insecurity, and they have a methadone clinic there at the VA. So the first thing is every 2 weeks, veterans meet with dietitians, and they serve over 200 veterans, right? So not just giving you bags of food, but getting the food and resources that you need to be able to live a healthy lifestyle. And the other thing is, we know, we heard a lot, now that a lot of our white counterparts are suffering from the opioid crisis, but a lot of veterans do suffer from substance abuse. And one of the things that was closed for non-essential services was the methadone clinic, right? So veterans who were used to receiving those treatments at the VA at a centrally located place in the Illinois Medical District are being told to go to Hines VA or some other place to receive those treatments, right? So those are a couple of things that veterans are going to continue to suffer from prior to COVID, during COVID, and after COVID, that really should be addressed. And I think that's one of the ways that at least the veteran community got together with the support of the Robert R. McCormick Foundation, but great partners like Karen Hernandez and the Travis Manion Fund, and also Leave No Veteran Behind, was able to pull together and open up an ad hoc food pantry site that happens about once a month at a church, Emanuel Baptist Church, right off Roosevelt and Ashland, to be able to provide food resources at least every 3 weeks to once a month. I think the last event fed over 300 families, over 2/3 of those responding to be veterans. So there's one place that we stepped up, but as you can imagine, a lot of the issues that exist for everybody exist for veterans, but the institutions that are pillars in the community have kind of stepped back because of COVID, like the VA.
Perhaps Karen, since you were mentioned, would like to speak as well.
And I'll throw Karen on the spot really quick. She's not going to bring this up, but she was deployed and was running a lot of the testing centers for the state of Illinois in the COVID outbreak. So I wanted to throw that out to her and put her on the spot really quick there.
Thank you, Manny, for throwing me in the spot. I'm having some technical difficulties, so you can't see my face. But yeah, so Chicago veterans, we've been able to, I think, just sort of, we had to shift all of our work, right? So we're a nonprofit, and I think we did see the shift in the need. So thankfully, people like Manny and Eli and the rest of the organizations in the veteran space here in Chicago, I think are great about working together. And I think we were able to fill a lot of those needs that we did have. So while we were, I think, adjusting a lot of our programming, we were able to be innovative and try to fill those gaps that Chicago had. And I think, no other city, I think, has the landscape that Chicago does have with the better nonprofit space, in the sense that a lot of us are willing to work together. I think a lot of us collaborate and overlap our work, and we're willing to adjust and, in order to make sure that we are taking care of the veterans that we said we would be taking care of.
I appreciate that. Actually, right out of the gate, that's something that's so noteworthy, how much you all are interconnected. We kind of joked about that before we went on the air, but that is proving itself to be very, very true. Last question about COVID, because we're not going to spend all of our time talking about the crisis. However, we are experiencing the predicted surge in cases that everyone was talking about when, COVID first appeared in the spring. I can remember like it was yesterday. It was, what's it going to be like during flu season? And now that's here. That is upon us. And we see, it's funny, we flashed up a graphic on Friday. Back on June 11th, Illinois was like the #1 state. And there were lots of states with green. And now when you look at that COVID map, it's all red everywhere. So the question is, what are the numbers looking like for our veteran population? Are they any different than other segments of our population, or are they the same? Are there, does anyone have any insight on that?
I would chime in on the numbers. I think one of the unique facets of veterans across the board is we actually represent every demographic pretty well. Whether it be African-American veterans, Latino veterans, white veterans, rural veterans. We truly are a cross-section of the larger society. I think, one of the more difficult pieces for veterans is that, luckily there are resources out there for them, like the VA. The kicker is the usage of those resources and those veterans who slip through the cracks. And so, I wouldn't have numbers on that, but what I would tell you is that it's very difficult once a veteran slips through the cracks, whether it be economically, whether it be from a mental health standpoint, is to actually service them. And what I had several veteran friends, colleagues, and also people who've been attached to our program and come down sick with COVID-19. The other issue is that the worse off the veteran is, the more riskier their situation is. And so I think there's a global desire, right, to stabilize veterans economically from a health standpoint, whether it be mental and physical health, because that is what mitigates some of the worst of a situation like COVID-19.
If I can kind of piggyback off of what Eli is saying, I think, the idea that veterans are a cross-section of the general population and really represent just here in Chicago, the diversity of Chicago. I think when you combine that with COVID, which we know at this point, 8 months in, is, it sort of affecting Brown and Black communities in really significant ways that other communities are not affected by. So I think in that way, the need is great to make sure that veterans of color have access to care, whatever that might be, whether it's through the VA, whether it's through community providers, as well as all of the sort of economic support and additional support they might need in the community.
I just might want to add as well that even though I may not have the numbers, but I've had an opportunity to work with a lot of our veterans, whether it's going out to the field and working with veteran organizations or just staying right there in the office and getting people that are walking in off the office. I think it's important for our veterans to understand and to know that there is a need or there is help for our veterans. A lot of our veterans get the idea that they don't know what's available to them. So I always encourage our veterans, please go and talk to any of our key leaders that were on the phone here and very surely watching us today. Ask us questions to find out what's available to you, because we are here to help you out. I get people that come into the office many times saying, where can I go for this? Where can I go for that? They appreciate the fact that I'm able to put them in contact with a live person to talk to them and give them assistance. So I encourage all of our veterans, as they listen to this virtual town hall meeting today, please ask questions and go and find out the closest resources that are available to you, because we are here to help you out.
And then the last place I'll just point out is a secondary impact is veterans who are using their education benefits, right? So there's a large generous benefit the federal government gives, the GI Bill, that virtually pays for school at some of the most expensive institutions, right? But one of the struggles that veterans have is they don't like to do online classes. So a lot of them participate in these in-person classes, whether it's at city colleges or at one of our great institutions in the county. Because they want to be able to interact, like myself, with the professor and be able to debate and talk back and forth. So the concern becomes, all right, if they're not able to do that and doing virtual classes, are they going to continue to matriculate into universities to graduation? And are they going to return back once things happen normally, right? And this is, once again, a huge economic driver in the veteran space, providing almost tuition-free education for veterans. So we're very concerned about veterans returning to school, whether it's next year or the fall coming up next year.
Thank you. I want to go ahead and grab some of the questions out of the chat. First of all, thank you. We have a big crowd and we have lots and lots of comments. So thank you for your engagement. And I just want to say, that's right, we're not letting you speak, but if you write it in the chat, we're going to get to it. So the first question that is related to COVID comes from Thomas Barnett. Are there any financial packages I qualify for to help during the COVID pandemic? Are there any specific financial packages for veterans related to COVID? And this, any that could be, some of these could be for businesses. I don't know, but I'm throwing it out there.
Yeah.
I'll talk. I was going to say, I'll talk a little bit about our programming with transitional jobs. Right now, Leave No Veteran Behind, we are hiring veterans to do contact tracing. And we're also hiring veterans to work within communities to actually mitigate the worst of COVID-19 through education and outreach. These are actual jobs that we're paying. Our fundamental value system for Leave No Veteran Behind is transitional work to act as economic stabilizers for individuals who are, might have lost employment, might be going to school. Many of these jobs, you're now working from home. So we try to make sure that our workforce is safe. But again, our goal as an organization is to make sure that we can help stabilize veterans economically. Over the last 10 years, we've been in existence for over the last 10 years. We've provided over 1,500 transitional jobs. We're close to $10 million in wages paid to veterans and their families. And that's a priority for us to make sure that we're helping out with those and individuals who need work to carry them over while they look for long-term employment. So that's just one program that we're looking at right now that might be helpful. If you're interested, please go to www.leavenoveteranbehind.org, and you can find out about some of the transitional jobs that are available to you and your family.
Excellent. We have that flashing on the bottom as well as we put it in the chat. Bill, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I just want to say Cook County has been very proactive in being partners with a lot of organizations throughout Cook County. One of the organizations that we deal with quite a bit is one of our sister organizations in Cook County is the Cook County Workforce Partnership, where it provides training, placement, and career coaching programs for our job seekers and provides additional resources for employers and training providers that are serving or located in suburban Cook County. The job training and placement program is an ongoing program. Right now it's going on through December, whereas right now veterans are receiving a priority for all workforce services. So I would encourage our veterans, if they could go up on our website, and I'm going to give our website many times as we talk, www.cookcountyil.gov, and click on Veterans Affairs. We want to encourage you to get our newsletter, because through our newsletter, you'll get quite a bit of information about the various partners that are working with us out here. But I would encourage all of our veterans to check out the Cook County Workforce Partnership Program and they can find out what's available to them as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I would just add, I don't have great details on this, but there was a special carve out for the stimulus checks for veterans who I think received benefits from the VA but hadn't filed taxes in the last couple of years. So randomly enough, I became eligible through whatever that criteria was when I wasn't eligible through the other range, right? So if you are looking for those resources, I don't know if it's stopped, but I think if you're still eligible, you can. But look into it. There was a carve out for veterans who didn't meet the initial criteria but met some other criteria due to their VA benefits.
Right.
Excellent. Thank you. We actually have another COVID related, well, actually not COVID, but it comes from Arnold Bradford. He says, what affordable and emergency housing opportunities are available for veterans in Chicago or throughout Cook County?
I was going to cover down on one opportunity that a partnership with Leave No Veteran Behind, Threshold, and also Chicago Veterans. There's actually an emergency fund that's available right now to veterans and their families for everything from rent assistance to cars, things like that. And so Thresholds is the intake, but it's partnered with all three organizations, and we are doing some emergency assistance around that. And I'll be quiet.
Yeah,
if I could add, to go back to Bill Browne's point, cookcountyil.gov. We have a variety of programs through our Bureau of Economic Development and opportunities to connect people to resources. So it's cookcountyil.gov. I think it's Community Recovery Initiative, and there are a variety of programs there. I think / Community Recovery Initiative. Is that right, Denise?
I'm going to get Alex to put it in the chat.
All right, so please put it in the chat. But our Bureau of Economic Development has a whole suite of programs to assist individuals and their families, and of course, veterans would be eligible for all of those.
Bill, you're on mute.
One of the things I just want to kind of go into it also, just at the beginning, since we're talking about the job market, is that Cook County is very proactive in terms of hiring our veterans. What we're doing today is we provide veteran preferences for our veterans. If a veteran is looking for a job through Cook County, they should go up on our website, apply for the job that they're looking at, and once they do that, attach a copy of their DD-214. And once they do that, what happens is, as long as they qualify for the job, they will get a job interview for the job because of that DD-214. So we want vets to know that we are proactive in trying to help our veterans as well. The other thing that I would like to kind of go into is we're also looking at our veteran-owned businesses out here. We encourage our businesses today to apply for free business advising, educational information, and answers to frequently asked questions. We also provide webinars and training to help the small business owners. Cook County has a network of partners that offers assistance in a wide variety of technical assistance to help businesses understand the variety of emergency support and resources. The goal of the program is to keep Cook County businesses informed about federal, state, and local programs to help manage their businesses during the COVID-19 pandemic. This is why it's so important to stay in contact with Cook County, because we do connect and work with a lot of our partners out here, and we want to work with all of our partners as well as the veterans out here to let them know what resources are available to them as well.
Yeah, and I would add a great partner the McCormick Foundation uses all the time, as Eli mentioned, is Thresholds. They have a very, very great homelessness program that really takes folks off the street. If you go to CHA, there's a lot of different housing organizations. Veterans New Beginnings, which is in the Auburn Gresham neighborhood. Volunteers of America have a few different properties. It just gets hazy if you're fully homeless and on the street, right? There's a ton of programs out there to help you, right? But if you're teetering on the cusp, it gets to be very difficult. And Eli mentioned the McCormick Foundation was able to help see some resources with Threshold, very, very small amount of resources to help. But as the president mentioned, there's a lot of rental assistance and things of that nature. And it's something to throw out. I know that I think the county threw some resources in the Fund for Equitable Business Growth. So there's an opportunity there for, once again, veteran entrepreneurs of color to really utilize some of the resources that the philanthropic community with the county have put together to help minority businesses. So as a veteran community, we got to get better about making sure we know about the resources that exist for these identity groups, whether it be people of color or women, what have you, and applying those to the veteran community, as well as the resources specifically for veterans. So just making sure that folks know that the county and all the other institutions are throwing resources in the pot. And just because they're not specifically calling out veterans doesn't mean that we were not eligible or we shouldn't be looking for to apply to these programs.
Great point. Great point, Emanuel. Wow, we are flooded. Lots of questions. We have a question from Tanya Bibbs, which I think I already know the answer, but it is directed at Madam President. Madam President, is there or will there be an event for vets and family members to learn about agencies and programs, perhaps a pop-up or walk-up? Because we do have vets that aren't computer or online savvy. So there is a concern about folks not having access to this forum today. How do we get information to them, or how can we make sure that they hear about these different resources we're talking about?
I think I'll ask Bill to respond to that. I know I get support from my staff to get on these calls. So I realize there's a certain age cohort that has some difficulty here. But I should pass this off to Bill here to respond.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam President. One of the things out of the Veterans Affairs Office is we do a lot of sharing of our newsletter and email blasts. We send out email blasts to a lot of veterans and veteran organizations all the time, letting them know what is available to them. They may not be computer savvy, but I do encourage our people to call us, give us info, and ask us what they're looking for. Some of the things that we share out of our office is, one would be the assessor's office. I get a lot of calls from veterans who are looking, how do I get veterans homeowners exemption? How do I take advantage of getting that disability letter from the VA so that I can get total exemption on my property taxes? Another item is through our Recorder of Deeds office. You might remember that through the Recorder of Deeds office, there is a veterans discount card. Before, you had to come in and actually get your picture taken and apply for the card. Now you can actually get that card online through the Recorder of Deeds office. They have information available in terms of how you can apply for it and get that information as well. Another item that we might have is the Veterans Treatment Court. The Veterans Treatment Court allows our veterans to be rehabilitated back into the law-abiding citizens they were before their experiences in the military and combat. Another information that might be helpful is letting our veterans know that they can get the word veterans put on their driver's license or their state ID. we work very closely with Jesse White, Secretary of State's office, that helps ensure that military veterans are living in Illinois who have received an honorable or general honorable condition receive the services and benefits for which they are entitled to. Now, it was mentioned earlier about the Community Recovery Initiative Act, and I would encourage all of our veterans to take a little bit more look at what we have out there with the Community Recovery Initiative. It's basically a rapid response initiative that provides comprehensive financial relief and critical support services to help suburban Cook County residents and their small businesses to rebound stronger than ever before the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. This initiative, which is funded by the Federal Coronavirus CARES Act, is part of the ongoing commitment to promote equitable economic growth and community development along with our partners.
Excellent. Yeah, I have interference in this household here. Thank you. There's a question in the chat that I think, Eli, you might be able to help with. They're asking about, is there training Leave No Vet Behind for contact tracing? You've mentioned contact tracing, so someone's asking about that.
Absolutely. So right now we're contracted to provide as one of the contractors for contact tracing, and there is training. So I'll give a quick overview of some of our work that we've been doing around community resilience. Again, I'll say it again. We think that veterans are catalytic in the community. Once a veteran is stabilized, once a veteran is properly transitioned, there's an opportunity to leverage that knowledge. There's an opportunity to leverage that experience for community good. Our focus is to make sure that veterans can come back and help people be more resilient in the face of these types of existential threats like COVID-19. Right now, there's an opportunity to become contact tracers with us. You also get training for contact tracing. But I want to highlight a really strong partnership that we are building and have with Cook County Emergency Management and Regional Security Office, where our veterans and young adults are actually participating in a pilot program where we're getting individuals who are veterans trained. We're paying wages, and those veterans are now working with young adults so that they can come into the community and help others get trained up in everything from CPR, first aid. They're getting trained up as contact tracers. They're getting trained up in psychological first aid, so that we're in a better position to respond to COVID-19 and social unrest and other issues. Our hope is to work with a focus on the south suburbs. We actually can activate community members and veterans, so that if we have everything from the blowdown that happened out there with the high wind to COVID-19 to any other type of flooding, that individuals can be seen as assets in their community. One of the strong parts about this program is we're working with the Cook County Emergency Management Office to get people CERT trained, Civilian Emergency Response Team trained. That way that you can be activated as assets when Cook County is emergency management personnel are overwhelmed by crisis, and you can be utilized and have tie-in with emergency management personnel like police and fire. So there's a great and unique opportunity for us as veterans to fill in the gaps when we're needed. We've got a history of that. Again, we've been around the table of emergency work. We've been around the table of anti-violence work, and I think that every veteran can point to themselves as success stories in the military. Why not to point to yourself as success stories outside the military when it comes to supporting and defending the Constitution, and also supporting and defending our communities and neighborhoods.
Excellent. Thank you. Another question from the audience comes from Dr. Joe Traiani. He is greeting us from the military psychology programs at Adler. His question is if COVID-19 is having more of an impact on veterans that experience Agent Orange, Gulf War syndrome, or burn pits associated medical issues. Have we seen any of that? Do we have anyone with any insight?
I'll add personal narrative from myself around that. I'm a veteran of both Iraq and Afghanistan. I served in Iraq in 2004, 2007 in Afghanistan. And, coming back, I had several, issues, health issues related to inflammation and all the issues that everyone's talking about with burn pits. What I would tell you is I ended up in the hospital at the beginning of this year in January with COVID-like symptoms. And I say all this to say, luckily I was in very good health. And for our veterans who are suffering from exposures, I was on the ground in both of those doing direct action and special operations. And for those soldiers, for those veterans who are coming back, who suffered exposures, whether it's Vietnam, whether it's Iraq and Afghanistan, you really have to focus on taking care of your health. And I don't say that as a, that's going to be the only thing. But when it comes to COVID-19, this is an issue where if your underlying health conditions aren't very good, the impact of this disease and virus is going to be detrimental to your health. And so as a person who kind of ended up in the hospital from COVID-like issues and with dealing with viral meningitis and just kind of all these crazy things happening to my health, the one thing that held me over was making sure that my underlying health issues are better. So I say that to any veteran out there, go into the VA, make sure you're getting checked out, make sure you're getting your blood pulled, make sure you're listening to the doctors, make sure that you're working proactively so that if you ever get hit with COVID-19, you're in the best position to fight. If you're dealing with diabetes issues, I was popped for diabetes at a very young age for no good reason at all. Make sure you're maintaining your blood sugar levels. Make sure you're doing all those basic things that you were doing in the military to stay fit for the fight, because this is a fight. And again, that's not medical advice. That's just good practice that we have to have as veterans, so that we don't find ourselves in the toughest place and behind the curve. And so again, I just say that as a personal aside. Make sure that you're doing the right things with your health. So if you have those environmental exposures, you're in the best position to be able to win the battle.
Thank you so much.
And if I can just add on to Eli's point to drive something home, the point of going to the VA, right? Because if you're not on these registers, and if you're not, if they don't know that you've been there or you're claiming these things, right? 10, 15, 20 years from now, when we all get our letters from the VA saying, hey, you might have been here, you may be exposed to this, you're able to get the compensation that you will possibly need and deserve, right? So those issues have financial ramifications to them that the VA will pay you for the rest of your life, which I know a lot of folks know about, but especially around Agent Orange, right? I think that if you're a veteran and you have ALS, right, they're just giving you 100% disability compensation because they're assuming that it probably has something to do with the service if you have these different indicators, right? So when I worked for the Illinois Department of Veterans Affairs, right, they have a whole team of veteran service officers whose goal is to work with veterans to claim their benefits, right? But this is a huge economic benefit for the state of Illinois, especially Cook County, because these are federal dollars coming in tied to individuals coming into the state of Illinois, into the county, that are generating economic benefit by going out to be able to provide food and groceries and things of that nature. So it's very important, to Eli's point, that you take care of yourself, but also that you go into those VA appointments that they know, so you can get the economic and health benefits that you need from the government.
If I may jump in there as well, well, Eli and Manny have just mentioned, I would encourage any of our veterans who have never, ever gone to Jesse Brown's or Hines or any of our VA hospitals, please go. There are veterans that come into my office from time to time. They have never been in the hospital system. I would encourage you, please go to either one of the hospitals, get signed up and get checked out so that you can find out what type of assistance is available to you. So please, veterans, go to those VA hospitals. They are available for you.
And I just want, first of all, thank you so much, Eli, for sharing your personal health challenges. Like whenever you have a panelist that shares that, that's always so helpful, and it's helpful to all the people that are listening. So thank you. But that also brings up what Bill just said, brings up something we talked about that wasn't planned to be talked about, which is this deal about having veteran status as part of your identity. Someone who served but hasn't been to the VA or hasn't been to any of these places, could you all talk about what qualifies you as a veteran? Because maybe people think they have to have served in a war. Maybe they think they have to have been a career person. And I just know that that's not the case, right? Can someone express like what qualifies you as a vet?
Basically, all you have to do is have a copy of your DD-214, bring it into the VA hospital, and letting them know that you are a veteran. They can verify that DD-214, and they will sign you up to get you into the system. So it's not that you have to be in any type of war or anything like that. It's the fact that you are a veteran and you are entitled to whatever benefits that might be available through the hospital.
And if I can jump in real quick, I'm just going to jump on my soapbox for 1 second, because the issue becomes, right, your veteran status and how you were discharged from the military very much matters when you come to public benefits. So with the state, including with the county, and most city benefits, if you have a other than honorable or dishonorable discharge, you may not be eligible for resources, right? And as we know that with the issues in the criminal justice system, the same folks that are running our criminal justice system run our military justice system, and folks are getting discharged with other than honorable or dishonorable at higher rates for African American and people of color, right? So we have to really take a hard look at our public institutions and how they disqualify veterans based on their discharge. And then with the McCormick Foundation, their veterans program, most of the nonprofit organizations that serve veterans do not have a mark on your discharge status. So in most cases, they won't even ask. I don't know if Chicago veterans are leaving a veteran behind us. I know for certain government contracts, you have to. But in most cases, if you have some documentation showing that you were in the military, a lot of nonprofits will serve you. And once again, a lot of them just don't ask unless there's some requirement for some federal grant that they have to mark the number of veterans. So I'll step off my soapbox, but I think that's a point, that's a sticking point for me, right? We have folks that have been dishonorably discharged or other honorably discharged that are totally moved away from a community that were their life source in a lot of different ways. So your status of how you were left the military does matter for certain places.
Yeah, I was gonna jump in and say the same thing. So at Chicago Vets, we consider anybody a veteran as long as they've served 1 day of service, regardless of discharge status. And so we say that all the time, just because we want to encourage people to reach out to obtain services. We recognize that there are many government agencies that disqualify. I think as Manny was saying, they disqualify veterans because of their discharge status. But those are the veterans that really need the help. So I think we've tried to become advocates in any space that we work with, and any of our partners. We always talk about how, those are the people that need the most help, and so we need to figure out either how to help them upgrade their discharge, which has become a thing recently, and we've been helping veterans upgrade their discharge status, or allow government agencies to kind of reduce those restrictions. And while we do understand that, like Manny was saying, a lot of it is federal money. Some of it is, dictated down at the county level and at the city level, or these government agencies. So that can be changed, within some organizations. And so we try to push for that, because those are the veterans that need the financial assistance, that need the housing or the medical assistance, and they can't receive it. So we do encourage, anybody to reach out to us if they are looking for resources, and we'll help them navigate that. There's many community partners that we work with that don't require a specific discharge status. But I think that's really important to note that, that there are many organizations that do require it. And so the definition of a veteran is very skewed, because it depends kind of where you're going, whether you're a veteran or not.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification, because again, there's so many opportunities that may be out there, and I wanted to make sure that we asked and make sure, because we invited so many people to this, just to hear what qualifies them as a veteran. So thank you all for chiming in on that. Let's see. I have a question that's not in the chat. I think we've touched on this in some way, shape, or form, but I would like to make sure that we have a formal ask of, we have a lot of veterans in our chat that if we invited today to this town hall, and, is there a specific message that you want to have to the veterans about your organization's commitment to supporting them? Like I said, everybody has said that in some way, shape, or form, but I really want this to be that heartfelt message to the veterans about your commitment for serving them.
Why don't I begin? I just want to thank Bill Browne and the folks who work with us in the Veterans Affairs community. and all of you who run not-for-profit organizations or serve in foundations. You know, we have a great nation, and you know, I grew up when there was a draft, and in a lot of ways, the draft was a good thing. I mean, I realized that there were a lot of people in the streets protesting it, but it brought people together across the country of very different backgrounds, geography, class, race, ethnicity, and you know, our armed forces have provided upward mobility and opportunity in a way that other sectors of our economy have not. So, you know, I'm really grateful to those who have served in the volunteer army. My view is that we ought to have national service, and service in the armed forces can be one branch of that national service. But I'm particularly grateful to the people who serve us now in the volunteer army. And I know that often when they come back, they're not as connected maybe to veterans resources as some of the folks who served in combat earlier or served in the military earlier. So I really appreciate all of you, whatever age you are, who've served in our armed forces. And as I said, in my own family, my father and his brother served in World War II, and we're proud of their service. So thank you all for your service and sacrifice.
Good afternoon. If I may add on and jump into this for a second here. During this pandemic 19 that's going on right now, I know a lot of our veterans are concerned about what's going to happen to them. Either they may be running out of food, they might be having problems with their utilities and things of this nature. I just want to let our veterans know that we work very closely with CETA. Now, I know many of our vets are concerned about how am I going to pay for my lights, my gas, my water, and whatnot. We have a very good working relationship with CETA, and we would encourage you to call us or get in contact with us in terms of how we can connect you with the people in CETA so that you can get help with your assistance in utilities. The winter is coming up, and we know a lot of people are going to be concerned about that. Another item that I want to pass on to you is that we work very, very closely with the Greater Chicago Food Depository. There are many vets out here who are concerned about how am I going to get some food or put some food on the table for me. Well, we have resources out there. We have people out here that are working to help provide food for people out here. This not necessarily have to be for veterans, but all family members are not here. I know you can go to your local churches and local organizations out here that are giving out food. Don't be embarrassed about not going to these organizations out here because they are out here able to help you out. There's also places like PADS working for people who might be homeless. As there's a couple of organizations that have already been mentioned, we work with A Safe Haven and Volunteers of America as well. So we provide organizations that will provide assistance in terms of getting a veteran off the street. So I would encourage our veterans, as they're listening to us today, if you need assistance with the utility, you need housing assistance, you need food assistance, call us, give us a call back. And that's why I want to currently encourage our website, cookcountyil.gov. Please go into that website and type in Veterans Affairs. And you're in there, you'll see a place where you can put your email address for our newsletter. You'll see that President Preckwinkle has a newsletter coming out about every day or every other day with a lot of good information. Once you get in on that newsletter, you'll get that information as well. So please take advantage of that information that's out there. But I know winter is coming up, and I would encourage all of our veterans, take advantage of what's out here today. And as a veteran, I know many of you probably know, and I send this out to many of our veterans, is that going to be a lot of free meals coming up for Veterans Day. So I would encourage, even though a lot of our stores are going to be closed, but a lot of them will still have carryouts or might have time frames down the road where you can take advantage of these restaurants down the road. But I would encourage our veterans, take advantage of this information. Take advantage of our website, and please call us, let us know what we can do to assist you. The other thing I just want to kind of leave everybody with also as well is that I get calls from vets who are trying to find out more information about their benefits, what's available to them. We have veteran service officers that we work with that will be willing to work with our veterans, talk with them over the phone, and find out what information that when they served and how they served and whatnot, and they can let them know what benefits they are entitled to get into. So I encourage our veterans, please call, find out what's available to them, and take advantage of those services. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Bill thinks we're wrapping up, but we're not. We still have a whole half an hour. So, and that actually brings up, oh, Emanuel, were you going to say something?
Well, I just wanted to give a quick plug to Madam President. Thank you for having a person on your staff directly responding to veteran issues, right? I think that's hard to come by in for a lot of executive staff. So having somebody that we can go to and directly resolve veterans issues. And also Eli can attest to this. Like we've met with you, Madam President, a number of times to discuss veteran issues over the last few years. So thank you for always being available to hear our concerns and talk about those things. And if I can just throw out a real quick piece of advice, being on the younger end of the spectrum of my transition, right? I just reached a point where I've spent more years of my adult life out of the military than I did in the military, right? And, thinking that I've transitioned like a couple years ago and realizing that certain stuff still you have to work out of you or not do. So don't think that your transition is over 2 words. It takes a long time for you to get out some of the bad ideas in your head, but also to kind of normalize yourself and to show up to stuff 5 minutes early instead of 15 minutes or 30 minutes early, right? So just realize that your transition, and honestly, I say, is lifelong, because sadly, a lot of us is going to get a letter from the VA 20 years from now talking about something that we need to come get checked out for. So your transition is lifelong, and don't beat yourself up if you have some stumbles along the way.
That's funny. I'm the daughter of a military person, and I have those same time issues that you just talked about. So there's those of us who weren't in the military, but we were adjacent, and we absolutely share some of that same trauma. But here's a question that I want to take us a little bit away from crisis and just talking about everyday life. And I'll start with small business ownership and entrepreneurship. At our last virtual town hall, we talked to MBEs and WBEs, and there's another whole category that folks can get credit for some of that same if they do business with veteran businesses, and that also people with disabilities. These are all protected groups that you can get extra assistance and extra opportunity when you're bidding on, different contracts in government. So can we have anybody address maybe what we might be doing for our veterans that are business owners? Of course, you can address COVID stuff, but also just in general, how are we supporting our vets that are entrepreneurs and business owners?
If I might jump in there for a second there as well, is that we have an outstanding contract compliance department at Cook County, whereas I get vets that call in asking me, how do I get certified to become part of the system where I can get that X percentage that's set aside for MBEs and WBEs and veterans like that. So I encourage our veterans to give us a call, and I put them in contact with the people who are associated with contract compliance, showing them how to get certified for contract compliance. Basically, those veterans have to be at least 51% owning of the business. And it's just a matter of applying for the certification and going through the paperwork in terms of what has to be done. It's not a system that is a person that cannot get into it, but we encourage our veterans, if you do qualify, you're a business owner out here, especially if you're struggling right out here right now, we encourage you to call us so that we can put you in contact with our contract compliance department, and they can help you out in terms of moving to the right direction out here. Like I said earlier, we have webinars and we have information that's available for partners who are working with our Cook County to try to help our business owners, the SBA, to all get them involved with working with our veterans to become more astute in terms of being better business owners out here. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in. We actually we've been working on identifying or having veteran business owners identify themselves to us. So we're starting to hold the platform and sort of keep their data. So we're working with the city's Department of Procurement Services, which is the DPS. And so they're the ones that actually certify your VBEs and WBEs. And so we just held a webinar, a 2-series webinars. So the first one was how to certify as a veteran-owned business or receive your veteran business enterprise certification. And then the second was how to bid for the city. So we're going to continue to have those. They should be posted up on our website, so you can watch the video at any time, sort of just to get more reference material. But the great thing, I think, is that the city does, the DPS, Department of Procurement Services Department, they are, they're really open to receiving phone calls, to assisting to kind of helping to help the veteran navigate, which I think is going to be the more complicated process, because it is a lengthy process. It's not going to be a simple process, but I think the great thing that we do have is that DPS is very open to having, to assisting that veteran to walk through that process, and even just to identify whether, they would qualify for something like that. So I would encourage them to reach out to DPS. I can share with you guys their information right now, and they can directly reach out to the department to help them navigate that process.
Thank you, Karen. Anyone else with touching on veteran businesses? All right. Another aspect of that life is, a lot of the folks that are talking are military folks, but I also want to ask you, what are ways that civilians and those of us who haven't served, how can we support our veterans, right? Some of us have veterans in our family. We have veteran neighbors. I just feel like there's an opportunity for you to tell us how other folks may support veterans in our community and throughout our lives.
So I think I'll take this one on. One of the issues that I think we have to face as a nation is addressing the civilian-military divide. President Preckwinkle, you brought up a really good point about during your time there was a draft. When I returned home from Afghanistan, I called a mentor of mine who served in Vietnam, and I joked with him that they had it much worse than us in Afghanistan. And he disagreed with me, and I said, how could you disagree with me? You guys. You guys were coming back to a very hostile country at the time. You had the draft at the time. When we got done off a mission, sometimes we had kind of lucky where we had a generator. We start playing video games after the mission. And I have a thing about snakes and bugs. I was like, good thing we went to the desert, because you guys were in the jungle dealing with all types of creepy crawlies. And he looked at me and he said, all those things are true, but at least the country knew we were at war. And it really struck me in 2007. We were in Afghanistan, and for the rest of my life, I don't think I'll ever have a day in which I don't think about my service. And that's not a negative or positive thing. That's just, it's such a big part of my life. And the idea that somehow we've been at war for close to 20 years now, and there's a whole group of folks in America that don't realize that we're still actually in Iraq, in Afghanistan, now in Syria, and there are people and their families that, have family members that, ultimately, hey, please forgive my dog. But we have family members that, that have their loved ones overseas. And so when people ask me what can civilians do, there's an acknowledgement piece that's absolutely critical that we have to have, that, we're in the longest conflict in our nation's history. And we have to acknowledge every day that there are individuals right now that are far from their families that are serving, and that are going to be coming back with very specific issues because of that. And those individuals don't have the luxury of not thinking about their service every day or the commitments that they've made every day. And so I just think that, if there's anything that's critical for us as a nation, is that we can't have a military that's so far removed from the experiences of its people. It is not healthy for any democracy. It's to the point where the military at this stage has the highest approval rating out of any institution in America. And while I'm proud to say that we have a professional military, a volunteer military, it shouldn't be that way. President Preckwinkle, you said it best. All service should be looked at honorably. My mother was a Chicago public school teacher for over 40 years. That's a very honorable profession. That is a form of service. And the institutions that we have in this country need to be looked at in a very similar way as the military, because I've never seen a democracy survive successfully when the only institution that's respected is our military institution, or worse, that you've been at war for 20 years and you somehow forgot about the fact that we've been at war for 20 years. So that's, I have to say that, the civilian military divide is a big issue for me. I believe that it's a fundamental component of a healthy democracy when we understand what our military is doing, and it's an integral part of our lives. And so that, to me, that's the biggest thing that civilian folk can do, is make sure that they're tied into the fact that our military has been at war for at least 20 years.
Thank you, Eli. Appreciate that. Anyone else want to chime in?
On a lighter note, more pragmatically, if you know somebody or connected to somebody that's deployed, send them a package, right? One of the best things that can happen on deployment, and this is Eli's going to talk crap to me afterwards, but this is a lot like a Navy deployment, right? Where you kind of can't go anywhere, you can find to your quarters, right? But you just love getting packages, right? So you just wanted something, right? So a lot of times you're disconnected from the world. So even if it's a few bags of chips or some thank you letters, right? If you know somebody or connected somebody that's deployed, just send them a package, because when everybody's getting stuff in, you're not expecting something. Just to get something is very helpful. And deploying is very difficult, but deploying through the holidays is probably even more difficult, right? And I don't know if it's better or worse during COVID, because your family members may be getting together without you, or they may not be getting together without you, right? So just thinking about just ways to support folks who are deployed, and that the few packages I got from folks or from my mother or a random cousin that was served in the military back in the 70s, right? This is stuff that I didn't forget from those deployments.
Now with something, it's not as lively, I think, as Manny. So I think we're aware, right, that we lose 20 veterans a day to suicide. So I think, as civilians, right, because they are our family members, they're our friends. I mean, suicide isn't it's not just a veteran problem. It's a community-wide problem. But I think as a community member, if you just want to maybe take part or help in, or feel like you're helping in something, I think taking part in the assist training that's provided, Safe Talk, there's Living Work. So I think in being able to have those life-changing conversations and being able to know how to help somebody, reach out or ask for help, or just even knowing how to ask, are you thinking about committing suicide? I think, if there's so many resources out there and trainings and certifications that you can get, and it's not going to help you save somebody's life, because the training is not meant for that. It's not meant, you're not going to save everybody's life, but you're going to be able to at least ask that question to maybe help a few people obtain, the mental health support and access that they need. I think that's just something quick. Most of these trainings take between 1 to 4 hours, but they can be life-saving, and I think they can change lives of our entire community would have this training and would know how to ask those right questions.
Appreciate that, Karen. That actually brings up, there's a couple things that have come into the chat. I'll get there in a second. But Dr. Van Horn, can we talk a little bit about, I think building on what Karen just was talking about in ways that we can support, mental health wise for our veterans? Would you mind?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I keep wanting to say something, but you guys are all saying it better than I could. So this is a wonderful conversation. I think now more than ever with the isolation that's happened with COVID, and I think everyone's experienced it, but it's really even more profound for veterans. Isolation is sometimes part of service, and it's also sometimes part of returning home. And I think it was Eli who was talking about the sort of veteran-civilian divide. And the way in which there's just, I think, a lack of mutual understanding. I think many people aren't aware that veterans are everywhere in our community. Many people come from military families. Many people serve in the National Guard as reservists. And I think, and in terms of how to bring that back to mental health, I think, first of all, if you know a veteran, if you know someone who is serving, ask them how they're doing. I think we've gotten away from just kind of connecting at a very basic level with the people that we know and care about. And I think also more than that, if you know someone who's struggling, help them, help connect them to a resource. If they're here in Chicago, Road Home program, we talked before about helping people access resources regardless of their discharge status. So Road Home treats anyone regardless of discharge status, regardless of definitions of veteran status. If you were in 1 day of training, we will provide you mental health care. And that actually extends to families as well. And we define, family as how the veteran would define family. So, which I think is really inclusive, and also helps maybe non-traditional family members get access to care. So those are some things I want to put out there. And just to kind of bring it back to Thanksgiving, and some of the challenges that are, we're all experiencing right now in COVID, thinking about how to connect with people that we care about. But for veterans and military families in the Chicago area, Road Home is actually partnering with Joel Osco and Miller Coors to put together a turkey drop on the 15th of November. If I can figure out how to do this, I'll put in information. You have to sign up because of COVID with it's an Eventbrite site, I think. Maybe you can put that up there. But basically a turkey dinner, you come and pick it up. There are also, connections to other resources. And so those are a couple of things. But ask people how they're doing. I think that's something we just don't do enough, if I could just come back to that.
Absolutely. And we'll get that in the chat. And November 15th is Sunday, y'all. It's funny. All these days kind of run together when you're in your house every day and you're talking to people in a screen. I have no idea what day it is. It's actually November 9th, and November 15th is on Sunday. I got it. We're going to get that in the chat. Thank you so much. Is there any other tidbits? Yeah.
If I may just add on to that as well, Denise, is that veterans like to talk to veterans. I would encourage our veterans to reach out to the American Legions, the VFWs. There's all different types of service organizations out here. And I would encourage our veterans, they may or may not have the time, but I would encourage any of our veterans to join any of those different types of service organizations that are out there, because that way the veterans can kind of relate to other veterans out there. And a lot of them have been in the same wars or the same services or the same conflict that other people have been in. So I would encourage them to do that if possible.
Excellent. A question came in over the chat about how to send packages to to folks who are deployed. Maybe we don't have people in our family currently, but we want to help folks. And I'm a writer. I will definitely join sending some cards and sending some packages. So if we know of any organizations that might be able to connect folks who don't have a direct connection to vets, we would love to have that information, and it's come up in our questions. Are there ways? Yes, thank you. Thank you. From Phil. Are there ways of connecting with soldiers to send packages and develop relationships, even if you don't know any? Thank you, Phil.
Yeah, there's Operation Care Package from Chicago Cares. I know that they do that. I know that the USO also does something like that. I don't know how you would directly get information from a unit deploying, but you can use, I think, those organizations to help you connect. Or maybe even just, drop off your package to them and then they send it out. I don't know that there's any organization
I think you should also check with Girl Scouts, because I never eat Girl Scout cookies, but I always buy Girl Scout cookies for military folks. And I don't know I don't remember. I think it was maybe that troop, but I'll just put that out there. That's a way that I've been able to send things to folks. Anybody else have any insight on how to?
Yeah. There was a organization called Operation Gratitude, but I think most of those are like in-person programs where you get like a bunch of staff together and send off care packages, which I imagine isn't really happening now. So I think not to throw any more on Bill Browne's plate, but I think he's the person to follow up with. But we'll make sure we get him any information that we know of if folks want to reach out to Bill.
If I may add on that as well, is that I did mention earlier the American Legions, the VFWs and whatnot. They have auxiliary programs within those organizations where they actually do put together care packages. They find out from family members in the community that have loved ones overseas there. And what they do is they connect with them. And once they find out where the veteran is located over there, the auxiliary people of these various organizations will put together care packages and send them overseas. It's been very helpful.
I think another thing to just add to kind of go back to USO. USO also supports reserve and guard units, here in Illinois, and also across our country. So, USO can connect to a lot of people. So, I mean, they bring us treats when I have drill on the weekend. So it's nice.
Awesome. Thank you.
And I think if I can just add, Dr. Van Horn brought up a really good point, and I once again would throw Karen under the bus, right? But I think in Illinois, we're very National Guard heavy as opposed to active duty military. But more and more, since there wasn't a draft, more and more of our National Guards men and women are being called upon to serve active duty overseas. Not in a lot of ways, not getting fully compensated as they should be, right? In a lot of different ways. So we think about veterans, right? And the question was about how we identify veterans, right? We also need to think about, especially in Illinois, our guardsmen and women who are serving active duty. So a lot of us don't have to, but also responding to things like COVID here in Illinois and the flash floods and things that happen. So thank you for bringing that up, Dr. Van Horn.
Yeah, and it's acknowledging, not throwing her under the bus. We're acknowledging her. Yes, we put the USO in there. Anything else? This has been a fabulous conversation. I've learned so much today, and I thank you to the almost 100 people who have been with us this entire time. And what's great is these virtual town halls are always, they live on President Preckwinkle's Facebook page, and so we'll have bunches of people that will watch this in the coming weeks. So thank you to everybody who contributed. President Preckwinkle, do you want to say a quick word to close us out? Or I can make Bill do it. I'm just kidding.
I'd just like to thank all of you. Rebecca Van Horn from the Road Home Program, Eli Williamson, Leave No Veteran Behind, Emanuel Johnson from the McCormick Foundation, Karen Hernandez, Chicago Veterans, Bill Browne, our Cook County Department of Veterans Affairs, and of course Denise Barreto, our moderator. Thank you very much for joining us today. We really appreciate your participation and your interest. And I hope you've gotten some useful information that'll be helpful to you. Happy Veterans Day to everybody.
Happy Veterans Day. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Have a good day. Happy Veterans Day.
Happy Veterans Day, everybody.
Happy Veterans Day.